Professional football in America is a special game, a unique game. Played nowhere else on earth, it is a rare game. The men who play it make it so.
Chicago's two biggest sports icons are Michael Jordan and Walter Payton.
When God said, I'm going to make a football player, he chiseled my dad out of rock.
A football expert once said, when God decided to make a perfect halfback, he chiseled out Walter Payton. He is constantly preparing his mind and body to be perfect in an imperfect game.
This is like my hero growing up. That sets the wheel to never stop.
And here's the handoff to Walter Payton. Breaks off right tackle, breaks the tackle to the 20, to the 15, to the 10, to the 5. Touchdown!
Payton doesn't have a statue to commemorate his greatness. He doesn't need one. Sweetness lives on in the hearts of fans.
See, that ain't skill, that's heart.
It was Payton's sheer will that truly defined him.
Shakes off the tackle, Payton inside the 5. Pitch back to Walter Payton, change of direction, daylight for Walter. Look out, here he goes.
I didn't know who he was, and I saw him make this one run. He fought for every inch.
Walter Payton was all about fight. When he would come through the line of scrimmage, he wasn't going to go just break to the open area. He may run over you in the process.
Must have twisted and knocked 3 or 4 guys over, spun around, accelerated.
The toss to Payton, sweeping right. He's got some blocking. Makes the turn, 40, 35, 30, right sideline, 25, 20. May go all the way, 15, 10, 5, touchdown!
And I said, oh my goodness. What kind of animal is this? That was it. I didn't have to say any more. I knew this was a great run.
I felt that I had an ability or gift from God, and I wanted to exploit it, not for myself, but just to do it because I had it. It was something that was given to me, and it was given to me for a reason.
It's like one of those cowboy movies where a guy is coming at him, and then he gets shot once, he goes down, he gets shots again, and he gets again and again, and he's still walking.
He would carry the ball 25, 30 times, maybe get hit 5 or 6 times on each one of those runs, and he was ready to go.
Then all of a sudden, big explosion, go boom, arm over here, arm over there, leg over there, and they still trying to get together. That's the type of runner I was.
He gave me something that I once realized that I didn't have, and that's what I wasn't the biggest, I wasn't the fastest, I wasn't the strongest, but then I bumped into something called work ethic. Walter wouldn't quit.
Payton left his unique mark on all who watched him soar up the all-time rushing list.
First play, or if it was a first run, or if it was a 30th run, it was always the same speed, the same effort, the same determination.
Walter Payton was more than just a great runner. He was the most complete football player in the history of the game.
I had to prove something to myself. I wanted to be the best that I possibly can, not the best that a former Jim Brown was.
We were warriors, and he was a great warrior.
The thing that I saw in Walter was his determination, his second and third effort. One man couldn't bring him down.
Chased by Browner, stops and heaves the left side of the end zone for Payton over the shoulder. Saved for the touchdown!
You know, I call Walter a second and third effort football player, running back. You know, because, you know, you hit him, if you don't wrap him up, well, he's going to break it. And he just had that desire to keep going all the time.
Miguel Sears or guys before me, I don't want to reach their level. I want to reach what my level is. If it's below that or beyond that.
Walter Payton was my friend, the epitome of greatness.
He was just determined to be the best.
Kick ass, let everything hang out. Everybody!
Once you put wisdom with will on top of talent, you get what you call sweetness.
Sweetness.
There's a story that when you were in first grade, you were in line, a little kid, and you couldn't stand the idea you had to wait in line.
Yeah.
Come on, let's go already, let's go. And finally you started to run ahead of the line, and the big boys were chasing you to try to calm you down, and you gave them the little stutter step.
Yeah.
And that's where the stutter step was born, right?
Payton's high school football career was sensational. He remembers the first long touchdown run he had, not for the accomplishment, as much as for what it taught him.
Well, it gave me, that hypothetically pat on the back to say, you can do it, and get yourself going to work harder. But, sometimes you have to get a little dirt in the face to realize what's good for you or how to deal with another situation. By scoring a touchdown and doing that and making it and scoring it the way I did, sometimes you tend to walk around like a barnyard rooster with your chest out a lot of times. And it takes a slap in the face to bring you back to reality and to realize that the reason that you made it was because of the commitment and the dedication and the hard work that you put into it. And if you don't continue to work at it and to build on it, it's not going to be there. And that was one of the things that taught me at the end of that first year.
Payton learned humility and respect while growing up in Columbia, Mississippi, despite being subjected to racism and segregation.
Payton established himself as an incredible athlete at Jackson State. In 4 seasons, he scored 66 touchdowns. He also kicked 63 extra points and 5 field goals. But he's never been one to dwell on records and numbers.
Well, what are statistics? If you start believing and reading what you've done or looking back at what you've done, you're never going forward. And then a lot of times if you do that, you become content with what you've done. And then you feel, well, that's it. But there's a lot more.
The Chicago Bears saw his potential, drafting Payton 4th overall in the 1975 NFL Draft.
After his career at Jackson State, it was clear that professional football was next.
Despite playing at tiny Jackson State, the Chicago Bears selected him with the 4th pick in the 1975 draft.
I think about Walter Payton, obviously. Comes out of a small black college and goes on to become one of the great players in NFL history.
I came from as people said, small school that people will kind of scratch their heads about, say, well, they play pretty good football, but if they get into the professional ranks, they might not be able to hold what they're doing. So I had something to prove there. When I came in, I already had something to prove because people, they had doubts in their mind. And it's funny. I don't think it's running. It's a feeling that you get when you're out there and you're making cuts or you're making moves or you're catching passes, or you're just out there. It's sort of like performing.
I fell in love with one clip. It was a run that he had against the Kansas City Chiefs, and ever since then, that's my guy.
Like a ballet or something.
Well, I think when I was an assistant coach in Dallas and watched him, you know, I really never understood how great he really was.
He was the best blocking back, I can say that unequivocally, that I've ever seen.
Until I got to meet him in person and see him in person and see the things that he can do.
McMahon calls an audible, and as he's going to throw the ball, there's a linebacker coming ready to kill him. And all of a sudden, Walter steps up and levels the guy.
I think you get a one-dimensional idea of Walter when you see him from afar, and he's a great running back. I think he's the most complete football player I've ever seen. He runs, he blocks, he passes, he can kick. He could do anything we have to do. He receives the ball. He could probably play any one of maybe 3 or 4 positions, being receiver, running back, quarterback, and kicker.
There was a game, Walter Payton came in to play quarterback for the Bears. Not like as some joke, not as some gimmick. The guy could do everything.
You had to give him enough touches. You had to get the ball in his hand as a runner or receiver, and then he would make the other stuff happen.
Here's the snap to McMahon, a 3rd and 8. The rush is on, sets up a screen pass to Payton, right side, one-handed grab to the 25, 20. Down the right side, 15, 10, cutting right, 4. Down.
I do think he's the most complete back that I've ever seen.
McMahon takes, he hands it off to Payton, rolling right, he wants to throw. Payton stops, now spins back the other way to the left side, pop flies the end zone for McMahon! Yes! Touchdown, Walter Payton and Jim McMahon!
The thing I love most about football, and it might seem that it's contradicting itself simply because my job is to evade people and to get the ball down the field, but I enjoy the contact.
To some, it was his feared straight arm that they remember.
Even though he only weighed 205, 210 pounds. He ran as though he weighed 350 pounds.
The quintessential Payton run ends with his signature, the final blast into a tackler. And then a quick bounce up and canter back to the huddle as if nothing had happened.
In his 3rd year, Payton won the NFL's Most Valuable Player Award.
What kind of man is this? A perfectionist at work.
He did have that Michael Jackson superstar aura about him, and then he would break through that and be this regular guy.
A loving husband and father, literally revered by his peers. Bears All-Pro center Jay Hilgenberg talks about Payton the athlete, who leads by example.
Well, what Walter means to me is you're playing actually with a legend, and
just the determination he has out in the field and the way his work habits during the tough days out of practice, that it just really makes you appreciate what he has accomplished. And as a player, to try to duplicate his work habits, it can do nothing but help you in the long run. When we were watching films last year, Tampa Bay game, I never forget the move Walter put on Hugh Green. It was a sweep to left-hand side, and that's just total Walter what he did there. He made a cut back inside and turned it around outside, just completely left Hugh Green, who's now a standing linebacker, just dead on his feet and couldn't move, and Walter just walked it in it for a touchdown. Plays like that, you just sit back in amazement, and just, it's unbelievable that a guy after 10 or 11 years can still be making moves like that.
He was one of our leaders, but he was the practical joker of the football team. I mean, he was always playing jokes on everybody, including me.
Payton gets this same kind of respect from his teammates, but they also appreciate him for his sometimes devilish nature. His sense of humor is outrageous. Matt Suhey can testify to that.
Probably Walter's greatest gift is his ability to have the element of the prank and the surprise. He's tremendous at that.
I get these strange phone calls, and it would sound like an Hispanic-speaking woman. And she would say, "Coach Ditka, will you meet me at so-and-so and this and that?" Yeah. Well, of course, I never met anybody, but one day I'm out on a practice field, and I'm standing basically like this watching. And so I never thought too much about it, you know. So I was out on the practice field one day, and I was sitting there, my arms across, I'm watching practice, and I hear this voice behind me. "Oh, Coach Ditka, you look so cute. Will you meet me at the hotel?" It's Walter. And that's the way he was.
How many people had the guts to wear like their nickname? I like roll around with your nickname. I like to call myself the difference.
Once you make it up in your mind and in your heart that that you want to accomplish something or you want to do something in life, and you dedicate yourself to that, and you won't let yourself accept anything but that.
That's my nickname, and I'm just gonna get a headband of like the difference and wear it around. No way! I don't have the guts.
There is that driving force, and there always has been, as we said, and we've been saying throughout the show, about being the best. I remember the year you lost the rushing title to OJ, and you broke down and you wept.
Yeah.
You don't see that among professional athletes. "Oh, well, I did my best," and but you were like your heart was out on the sleeve.
Well, that's how competitive I am, and you know, it was an opportunity, and I guess at that particular time it was just not in the cards for me because I ended up twisting my ankle, and I guess everything happens for a reason. And the next year I came out a little bit more determined and a little bit more aggressive, and things happened the way they're supposed to. But like I said, maybe if I'd have won the rushing title that year, maybe it would have changed me to a point where I wouldn't be the person I am now.
There's always been a debate about the nickname, Sweetness. Did it come because of his sweet running style or his sweet personality? And where did it come? Did it come in college or high school or before that?
It came right before my professional career when we were playing in the postseason college bowl games. And a couple of guys, Reeve Sori, who was going with the Bears, and Bob Avellini. And, well, at that particular time, you know, it was like, as the times go, there are certain sayings like, "all right," and at that particular time, the saying was, "Oh, how sweet it is." "Oh, that's sweet."
Sweet it is.
So some of the moves that I would make in practice and kidding around, people would say, that was a sweet move. And after we got through practicing, we'd go in to the hotels and like see me walking around in the lobby, and for lack of anything else to call, they think about the move. Hey, sweetness. And
Sweetness knew toughness and what it took to reach the mountaintop.
Why he was good at what he did was all a product of what his physical conditioning was, his mental conditioning.
In 1985, after 10 punishing seasons, running back Walter Payton was still in superb shape.
I remember covering you all those years. It was one of the things you used to do, is to do the hill.
There's a steep hill near his home. It has become an obsession with him.
I have a visual in my mind of him running that hill with the Ruse headband on.
It was between 50 and 60 yards long, and it's at an angle where if you got halfway to the top and you tried to stop, you would probably end up slipping down.
I said, you know what? If this works for Walter, you know, I'm going to try it.
When you go into to a season, you don't look at the first game that you're involved in. You look at the long haul. That's 16 games, and that means you got to be ready to perform for each game.
And I started doing heels.
And the only way that you can be able to perform is that you condition and prepare yourself prior to the season, because once the season starts, you start working on the little final points of the game.
When I built my house in San Diego, I built a hill in the backyard. And the whole point in it was to kind of put yourself through things that you've never been through before.
I can remember we're in the same situations when I was playing with the Bears. We had just lost to the Houston Oilers 40-0. We had to win the last 7 games to even think about getting into the playoffs.
I always look at the hill as being like accomplishments. It's easy to be down at the bottom. Everybody can stay down there. And you can kind of get halfway up and you start feeling the fire burning a little bit.
And believe it or not, we did. We won all 7 games. We got into the playoffs. And that's a lesson, because even though you're down, don't give up, because once you submit, then anything can happen to you.
And I always told myself when I got tired and I wanted to quit, this is the time where you have to step up. What will Walter do?
But if you keep on fighting and you'll keep your focus, you can always win.
But it's nothing like when you get to the top of that hill and you can look down and say, man, I just made it all the way up here.
So that you get your timing down, you get the right amount of nourishment, and also you have to work out on the weights. My style is one that I got from my college coach at Jackson State, Coach Hill, and he always taught, never die easy, he said die hard.
Another important element in the complete Payton is being prepared to do your best over the long haul.
When you do that little stutter step, is there a kind of posture in that? I mean, I never noticed it until maybe the last 3-4 years. There's almost kind of an attitude as much as it's a step. I don't know if you agree with that.
I don't think it's an attitude. I think it's a means of survival. In other words, as evolution goes, you learn to adapt certain things to make you survive, and I think that's one of the things I've acquired, simply because when I use that step, what it does for me, it breaks my timing, it breaks my rhythm down, so that the opposing guy that's coming, he can't, in other words, when I'm running, he said, well, I'm going to zero him in on ground 2. So I'm coming, and when I get to ground 2, he's got his full head of steam going. But when I take that step, then he has to go, oh my God, I got to recalculate. And so it gives me that edge, because football is a game of angles and seconds. And if you can change the angles, then you got the edge.
When we played them my rookie year, and you know, hearing about Walter Payton, and you know, I was, you know, and you're a rookie, you kind of got your own little arrogant thing going. So I mean, I stood on the sidelines to watch him play. I stood up. I said, I'm gonna stand and watch him play. I want to see him really run the football. And I saw him knock out one of our defensive backs. They brought him to the sidelines, and he didn't know his name. I just thought that was the funniest thing that I had ever seen, because they were the same size. My aggression, instead of going outward and striking back at somebody else, I don't do that. What I use that to kindle a burning desire inside of me that I already have, to fuel it. And it just gives me that sense that I block out everything.
So competitive, there's so much drive, and it's always been there.
He loved to dance. He was really good. As a matter of fact, he's known for dancing on Soul Train.
You enter the Soul Train dancing contest. This is a few years back, and you did a great job, and everyone's going, wow, Walter can really dance.
I was looking at my future husband, did not know I was looking at my future husband, you know, at that contest.
And you were angry at yourself because you felt you should have won it instead of take second place. And you would later say, if I would have had a better dance partner, we would have won it, right?
Well,
Come on now.
She probably saying the same thing.
If a guy runs out of bounds because a cornerback is coming up to hit him, that's not my kind of guy.
One of my best friends, we just got into a massive argument over who the greatest running back of all time was. For me, it's Walter Payton. Like, defiantly, undoubtedly, without a question, it's Walter Payton.
And last but not least, as debatable as it may be in some people's eyes, Skip, I got to go with Emmitt Smith, man.
Jesus Christ.
I've got to go with Emmitt Smith. I mean, listen, he's the NFL's all-time leading rusher.
He was like, no, Emmitt Smith is the greatest running back of all time. I'm like, Emmitt Smith? So this argument's been going on for 10 years.
He wasn't the flashiest. I mean, you look at a Barry Sanders, you could say, well, he's more talented. You look at a Walter Payton, you understood all of that. The Jim Browns of the world, even though it's sacrilegious to mention it, the Jews.
Walter was definitely one of them because he was a powerful man.
So we're at Super Bowl last year in Dallas, and we happen to be in Jerry Jones's box, and who's there? Emmitt Smith.
No, it's one Jim Brown, of course. I mean, obviously, you don't want to mention him. It's almost sacrilegious to mention him.
Give me the hard Walter Payton. There's never been a greater heart.
Here we go.
Emmitt Smith and what he did is unparalleled. He has to be on the Mount Rushmore of the NFL, Skip.
No,
he just has to be.
Sorry.
I say, Emmitt, who was the greatest running back of all time? And Emmitt looks at me and he's like, Walter Payton.
Trust me. Trust me, his name is at the top of the list.
Okay, let's start with Emmitt Smith. He does not belong on the NFL's Mount Rushmore. I was there.
Well, there's some individuals that if they broke a record and they did it the wrong way, they wouldn't hear from me.
He's a great football player, and you're right, he was extremely valuable to a loaded football team that had a very good defense. And Stephen A., here's my problem. This is the disqualifier. For about 4 or 5 years, we could debate that. I believe that offensive line for the Cowboys was the greatest offensive line I have ever seen. Just absolute elephants who just devastated and dominated people with straight-ahead zone blocks. And Emmitt, at about 5'9", just ducked and darted behind them. And before the linebackers could find him, he was 6 or 8 yards upfield. Again, I'm taking nothing away from him, but when we're talking all-time, the top 4 faces on the NFL's Rushmore, Emmitt padded his stats up to all-time greatest at the end of his career, and he wound up in Arizona with a lot of garbage yards, a lot of running out of bounds after 5 or 6 yards, and avoiding any punishment late in his career. And I lost a little respect for that.
Supreme running back.
And he did it in a way that was so classy and respectable.
But the way that he was, his attitude, his ability, I have all the admiration in the world for him.
And that was it. That was it. Argument's over. Walter Payton.
Admired and respected by all.
In his 11th season with the Bears, Payton finally got what he wanted, a World's Championship. Normally, a star running back who had been around that long would be a symbolic figure, the old "let's win this one for Walter" story. But that's not the way it went. Walter was also winning it for them. It is just unheard of in pro football to go through 11 punishing years without injury, never missing a game. Payton's conditioning regimen astounds people. The Bears won 17 games and lost 1, and still furiously competitive, Payton led the way.
Payton's mere presence allowed others to shine. Matsui was one of 6 different Bears to score.
McMahon on a keeper leaps the line to the end zone for the touchdown.
It seemed like everybody on the Bears team was scoring touchdowns.
On the game's greatest stage, Chicago's greatest player was a marked man.
Wherever Walter went, they were sure going to keep an eye on him.
I think the fans, even the Patriot fans, would want Payton to have a touchdown.
McMahon scored twice, but the keyed up and keyed on Payton never found the end zone.
I feel real bad for 34. It's taken him 11 years to get to this spot and to not score a touchdown. I know Walter's not feeling good right now, and I don't feel that well for him.
Well, my dad, he was a guy who he was very easygoing. I mean, you couldn't upset him unless it was very serious. He would just take his time and figure it out and talk to you.
I think he should have been carrying the football, but that's not my decision.
I didn't even think about who was scoring. I could have cared less.
And I wonder who's going to get the call on this 1-yard line. They're sending in Perry.
But if it was something that you were doing against somebody else, he always said that it was dangerous or whatever. Then he would come in and he would sit me down, talk. And then after he got through talking, he would put his discipline to me.
When they chose to give the ball to Perry, it was obvious that it bothered Payton a lot.
Which was?
He would spank me.
With his hand?
Sometimes.
And sometimes?
With his belt.
How did you respond? How did you feel about that?
How did I feel about it? At that particular time, I couldn't deal with it. I didn't understand it.
And when the game was over, he was peevish.
The Chicago Bears are world champions of football.
He was visibly upset.
I hated it, just like any other kid, but now I'm glad he did.
But if I would have known what it meant to Walter, of course, I would have given it to him 8 times in a row. It wouldn't have mattered.
And he was sweating. He had tears in his eyes and had an angry look about him.
Walter Payton's more than a great athlete to me. I think that everybody will recognize him for his great athletic talents and the records he set.
His agent, Bud Holmes, comes into the room and says, basically, if you stay in here, or if you go out there and blast Ditka for not scoring a touchdown, you will be remembered for doing this for the rest of your life.
But I like to look at him as a person who has given so much to the youth of our country by his example as a football player on and off the field.
He said all the right stuff, but he was hurt. He was hurt badly.
One of Payton's best friends on the Bears is his backfield running mate, Matsui.
He's a tremendous person. He's the type of guy that you look at, if you got a problem, if something goes wrong, I know I could turn to him and he would help me out regardless of what it would take. And
to me, that's what's really important. I've always made one statement about Walter. I don't think he takes any more than he gives, and I think that's the true measure of a person in life.
Would you recall for us just a couple of 3 moments in your football career? Can you paint a picture for us of the day you broke Jim Brown's running record?
Soldier Field, Chicago, October 7th, 1984. The stage is set for a new career NFL rushing record.
Finally, after 13 seasons, he stood at the brink of the all-time rushing summit.
Now, he stood only a few yards away from football's most coveted record.
Waiting for him was the great Jim Brown.
Second play of the second half of the 21-yard line. Walter needs 2 to break the record. Second play of the second half from the 21-yard line. Walter needs 2 to break the record. High formation, quick pitch to Walter, looking for the record. He's got it. Walter Payton becomes the National Football League all-time leading rusher for passing Jim Brown. Looking for the record, cuts back. He's got it. He's out over the 25 to the 26-yard line. Walter Payton becomes the National Football League all-time leading rusher. Walter Payton becomes the National Football League all-time leading rusher. And that's the equivalent to Hank Aaron breaking Babe Ruth's all-time home run record. Quick pitch to Walter, looking for the record, cuts back. He's got it. He's out over the 25 to the 26-yard line. Walter Payton becomes the National Football League all-time leading rusher, surpassing Jim Brown, and that's the equivalent to Hank Aaron breaking Babe Ruth's all-time home run record. And listen to the standing ovation.
Jim Brown at the time was the standard, and Walter came in and took that standard to a whole nother height.
Like the Overstreets and the Delaney's and the Brian Piccolos, and what I did out there today is a reflection of those guys.
Mr. Payton, this is Air Force One. Stand by for the president, please. Congratulations.
Well, thank you.
Very best wishes. Congratulations again.
Well, thank you, and give my best to Nancy. Well, you know, it really doesn't stand out. You know, it's one of those things to chase dreams, to chase goals, because the mind that you have and the hope and the brilliance of color that you could paint just by thinking and striding forward. Once it happens, you know, it tends to lose some of the glimmer.
So can you remember? Can you remember the game?
I try not to.
And the play.
I honestly try not to. It's something that that's happened. It was something that the things that stand out to the most to me in my life are the small things.
What Walter's greatness came from Walter, and that's what he was. He was class, on and off the field.
It took a long while to find something that Payton would brag about.
Certainly you have enough ego to brag a little bit about your prowess as a passer. Now can we talk? Can we talk, Walter?
No. If you want to get me to brag about something, it's about my basketball. I say I can play some basketball. My biggest goal was when I used to play one-on-one in my driveway against Artis Gilmore. Yep, and I beat him too. As a person that whenever he played the game of football, he left everything he had out there on the football field. He did everything he possibly could for the team to win, not for himself, but for the team to win. That's the only way that anyone could be remembered. Whatever they did, they did it as best that they possibly could. That's all anyone would want out of life. It's not being the best. It's not winning this or not holding this record. It's just that when you were out there, because for a record, a guy could come out for the first time, never played the game, and break a record or set a record. But what is that? That's a record. And, you know, he might not ever play it again. He holds a record. He's written up as it. But for people to say, when he was on the football field, he gave all he had. And then when he was off the football field, he was just that much of a person that you could relate to, you could talk to. He had feelings. You know, that's what you want to be remembered as. Because football is a business. Walter Payton is a human being.
When you look at what an athlete is supposed to be, that was him. He believed his duty was to play football. That was what he was put on this earth for.
Sweetness is knowing that you're loved for who you are and not for what you've done.
And that's just my guy. You know, I mean, I'm just so intrigued by him. I was just thinking of a nickname that I wanted to be known by. I thought a little Sweetness.
Walter is the godfather to my son. And when I mention his name, it gives me chills because
My brother, I know he's gone, but he's still in my heart. I try to take him everywhere I go.
I believe in my heart that when God made a football player, he made my father.
When I'm through playing football, I want to be known as a player that every play he gave everything that he had. And when he left the field, he left everything that he had in him on the field. And I hope that you love me for who I am and not for what I've done. Thank you.
He was a beautiful athlete to watch, graceful and fluid 1 minute, a pile-driving battering ram the next. Sweetness to his friends, head and shoulder pads for others. When he encountered his greatest challenge as a man, a rare liver disease, he battled it with his trademark toughness. He didn't accept black market organs, and he could have. He kept his dignity, his humor, and his integrity. I had the distinct pleasure of working with Walter Payton in many corporate appearances, and I can tell you firsthand he was much more impressive a man than any captain of industry, any CEO of any multinational company. He took life on in his own way, and he attacked it as he attacked the defenders. That was his legacy. He was grit, heart, joy, and utter passion in everything he did, and in everybody he met. Matt Millen once said that watching Walter Payton on the sideline during a game was a real pleasure. It was an honor, he said, just to tackle him. Well, I felt an honor just to know him. Thanks for watching. I'm Roy Firestone. Good night.
Walter Payton, professional running back. Some say the best who ever played.